The photo was laminated. Let that sink in. It wasn't a paper sheet scrawled in a drunken fury at 2 a.m., taped up with mascara-streaked vengeance. No, this was deliberate, designed, printed in glossy finish at some upscale place that offered same-day service. She probably smiled while the clerk rang it up. It was pouring that morning, one of those raw, unforgiving October rains that soaks you before the door even closes behind you. My briefcase was dripping, my jacket collar sagged. I smelled like wet wool. And there it was, on the lobby's glass entrance. Centered, unmissable, a headshot of me from last year's holiday gala, cropped tight, high resolution, perfect lighting. Underneath, written in her unmistakable red Sharpie, someone needs a lesson on how to treat a woman. No signature, no explanation, just accusation, gift-wrapped in laminated fury. I stood there for a beat too long. That split second where everyone near the security desk pretended they hadn't seen me walk in. You know that pathetic choreography? When people shuffle papers just to look busy, when eye contact becomes lethal, when even the janitor suddenly finds an excuse to buff a spotless floor tile. I nodded once, walked past the front desk, through the glass doors, into the elevator, didn't say a word. I didn't take the photo down. I didn't mention it in the 9:30 procurement meeting, or in the staff lunch, or when Rita from HR nervously brought me coffee with too much sugar. Nobody dared ask. Not even James, my senior operations manager who's been with me since we were running this place out of a rented warehouse with a broken heater and rats for roommates. And no, I didn't slam any doors, or curse, or call my lawyer. I went to my office, shut the door quietly, opened the bottom right drawer, the one with the key lock nobody asks about, and pulled out an envelope I'd labeled 6 months ago in my own handwriting. M. Connolly, Archive. Then I sat back in my chair, removed my glasses, and thought, let's see how loud she really wants this to be. Let me pause right here, for the 90% of you listening but not subscribed. If you've ever been humiliated, cornered, or had your reputation smeared with a laminated smile, hit that follow button. It fuels the team to go even deeper into stories like this, especially the ones that end exactly the way they deserve to. Back to the photo. See, Monica always had a flair for drama. Her last job? A reputation consultant, which is code for I weaponize social media against people too polite to fight dirty. She once told me during dinner, if someone crosses me, I don't sue. I make them trend. I should have known then. We dated for 4 months. Maybe 5, if you count the week after she tried to convince me to just put her brother's firm on the next bid rotation. The intimacy was good, the wine was always her choice, and every conversation felt like a focus group. She never listened, just waited to talk. When I broke things off, I thought I'd get the usual snarky texts, maybe a blocking spree, a mutual friend caught in the crossfire. I didn't expect a full-blown campaign. The tweets came first. Vague, annoying. Sometimes the most dangerous men wear suits and smile politely while they dismantle you. Then the passive-aggressive Instagram story with a boomerang of red wine. Here's to those who pretend to be gentlemen. Still, I didn't bite. Because when you've run a company through 3 recessions, 6 audits, and a hostile buyout attempt, you don't get rattled by hashtags. But this was bold. She crossed a line. Not because she insulted me. God, no. I've been insulted by union reps, steel plant inspectors, and angry shareholders who own half of what I built. She crossed a line because she did it here. In my lobby, on my glass, in front of my employees. And now, every single one of them had seen it, walked past it, pretended they hadn't, and I gave them nothing in return. No outrage, no denial, just silence. Because when a man doesn't respond, people start to wonder what he's preparing instead. And Monica? She should have wondered harder. Monica Connolly once told a dinner party, with a mouth full of Cabernet, that reputation is just another form of currency. Spend it or weaponize it. She said this while flicking foie gras off a cracker like it personally offended her. The table laughed, mostly the men. One woman gave a look. That woman didn't get invited again. Monica was magnetic in that way. She knew the exact volume to speak when delivering a cutting anecdote. She never laughed too hard, never spilled a drink, never blinked when delivering veiled insults disguised as self-awareness. She was the kind of woman who made you feel like you were on a date with your own resume and losing. We'd met at a regional commerce gala. I was giving a dry, necessary speech about responsible offshore supply chains. She approached me after, said, "That was either the most boring talk I've ever heard, or the most brilliant. I can't decide." We had dinner the next night. By week 3, she'd toured the factory. By week 4, She was in my apartment critiquing my furniture. By week 6, she'd memorized which of my board members had public scandals and how to subtly reference them. And by week 16, she walked out of my condo after an argument about ethics like she was exiting a stage, coiffed, deliberate, and rehearsed. I remember her exact words as she paused at the door. Men like you don't fall. You get chipped slowly, until people start seeing the cracks. She blew me a kiss, and I didn't hear from her again. Not directly, but her online life? That started humming. Her Instagram bio changed to survivor of polite toxicity. Her post got darker, snarkier. Photos with captions like, just because you stayed silent doesn't mean you were kind. It means you were hiding. To all the women silenced by spreadsheets and boardrooms, your voice is your best weapon. A podcast clip surfaced on TikTok. She didn't say my name. She didn't have to. There's a certain breed of executive, she said, voice syrupy, who thinks being mild-mannered makes him morally superior. But let's not confuse politeness with decency. The comments were full of clapping emojis. Preach. Name him queen. Expose the beige devil. The laminated photo was the crescendo. Her performance's standing ovation. She wanted a response. A misstep. A counterattack she could frame as male fragility. She didn't get one, because she didn't understand Dan Rayner. See, I don't do theater. I do paperwork. While she was dropping cryptic hashtags and curated heartbreak, I was checking timestamps on emails from her former company. The one that mysteriously landed a subcontract after she'd casually introduced me to their procurement VP at that exact same gala. While she was quoting herself in carousel posts, I was rereading the transcript of a dinner conversation I'd recorded with my legal assistant present, where Monica joked about massaging compliance to get her brother's firm a leg up in bidding. Don't worry, she said, twirling pasta around her fork. Everything looks cleaner when it's been through a woman first. While she was trending, I was outlining the chain of connections between Monica, her brother, and the now-flagged vendor we'd quietly stopped working with 3 months ago. Because I didn't need a public apology. I needed her to keep going. Keep talking. Keep posting. Keep making herself loud and visible and self-congratulatory. Because the louder she got, the more people she attracted. And the more eyes on her, the better. She thought she was dragging me into the light. She didn't realize I was the one holding the switch. The knock came exactly 3 minutes before my 2 o'clock call with a materials vendor in Taiwan. Erica, my assistant, poked her head in, face pale and unsure in that way that makes your stomach sink before a word is even said. There's a visitor, she said. Didn't give a name. Just walked past reception and said he needed 5 minutes. Wouldn't say what about. But he saw the photo. My first thought, press. Maybe some local hack looking for a scandal to inflate into clicks. My second, a potential client, put off by drama in the lobby and ready to pull a deal. Neither. It was worse. He walked in like a man who'd already made up his mind. Tall, mid-60s, sharp blue eyes that didn't scan the room, just landed. Trim suit, a folder in his hand. The way he stood suggested habit, not nerves. The way a man stands when he's always the most powerful person in any room he enters. He didn't shake my hand, didn't introduce himself. He just looked at me and said, "You're Rayner." "Correct," I replied, standing. He gestured toward the lobby. "That display out front, it's yours?" I gave a neutral shrug. "Not mine. But yes, it's in my building." Silence. Then, flatly, "You might want to take it down." I tilted my head. "Is that a suggestion or a request?" He ignored it, took a card from his jacket and set it on my desk. Leonard Graves, Federal Compliance Office, Office of Contractor Integrity, Department of Procurement Oversight. He let me sit with that for a moment. "I was here reviewing logistics metrics for a separate project," he said. Saw the photo, recognized the name. My heart didn't drop. It paused. A long, cold second of stillness while the wheels turned. "Monica's name," he continued. "Miss Connolly's associations are being looked at. Quietly. For now." I didn't ask why. Because if a senior federal officer walks into your privately owned company, unscheduled, and tells you that your ex-girlfriend, who recently went viral for publicly humiliating you, is now a person of interest in an ongoing compliance observation, you don't ask questions. You listen. Graves opened his folder. Not all the way. Just enough to reveal a document stamped with a red header. Procurement watch list. Internal, not for public release. I saw her name. Twice. Once next to her brother. Once next to the name of a vendor we stopped working with last quarter. Her proximity to firms flagged for irregular submission processes raises concern, he said. And your name shows up repeatedly in bid approval chains. We're not here to accuse. But optics matter. I nodded once. Calmly. Understood. He closed the folder. You may want to review who you're associated with, Mr. Rayner. Perception is currency, especially in defense-adjacent manufacturing, especially in this climate. I didn't defend myself. That would have looked desperate. I just said, noted. He paused at the door, then added without turning. The photo, leave it up if you want. I just advised thinking very carefully about who else might see it. And then he was gone. No threats, no demands, just a message disguised as courtesy. It wasn't about the insult anymore, or the accusation, or the office gossip that trickled like blood in the water since Thursday morning. This wasn't about my pride. It was about exposure. And Monica? She didn't just shame me. She just put herself on the map. For someone a hell of a lot more dangerous than I'd ever planned to be. I got home that evening and fed the dog first. That's what I remember. Routine is strange like that. It wraps around your life like a protective film, even when you know the glass underneath is already cracked. I poured myself one glass of Lagavulin. No music, no TV. I watched the amber ripple and settle. The same stillness I'd learned in boardrooms, in mediation sessions, in those moments when the silence isn't empty, it's calculating. Then I walked into my study, unlocked the cabinet behind the bookshelf, pulled out the safe, dialed in the combination. Click. The folder wasn't thick. Just a manila envelope with reinforced corners and a red tab that read, M. Connolly, Archive. Not revenge, not blackmail, just documentation. Because I've lived long enough to know, the loudest person in the room usually steps into the trap they think they're setting for someone else. I laid the contents out on the desk like a forensic table. First, the email. Subject line. Quick thought on Friday's shortlist? It was sent at 11:03 p.m., 2 months into our relationship. She was staying over that night. Her toothbrush was already in the bathroom drawer. The body of the message read, I noticed a few of the vendors are still pending for Q3. If you're open to it, my brother's firm just upgraded their QA processes and could definitely handle the load. I know it's early, just planting the seed, winky face, smiley face. That casual charm she always used to soften impact. For most people, it worked. For me, it set off alarms. I didn't respond. Next, the voice memo. I kept it saved as wine_pasta_contractors.m4a. It was from the night she invited me to an industry networking dinner with a VP from a parts supplier. We ended up back at my place. I was in the kitchen pouring another glass. She didn't know my phone had recorded the whole conversation she had on speaker while freshening up in the guest bath. In the background, her voice rang out like a damn podcast teaser. Dan's cautious, but he's not suspicious. You just have to frame it like he's being savvy by choosing you. Once he thinks it's his idea, it's done. I've seen it before. Softness gets you contracts. Specs just get you audits. She laughed. I didn't. That memo had never left my drive. Then there was the affidavit. It came from someone I didn't even solicit, Susan, a former colleague of Monica's from her previous PR firm. She reached out 6 weeks after the breakup. Said she'd left quietly after Monica threatened to reconstruct a timeline of harassment if Susan didn't stop contacting a mutual client. I paid for a notary, covered the fees. No promises, just kept it. She wrote, I am voluntarily stating that Monica Connolly misused her position at Redacted to manipulate the outcome of a corporate image overhaul campaign by falsely attributing sexual misconduct claims to a competitor's internal rep. She bragged about it to me over drinks, stating it was just a little narrative nudge. It was chilling, but not surprising. I'd always known she operated in shadows. Monica didn't manipulate you. She manipulated the context around you until your options funneled toward her desired outcome. It was elegant, and for most people, invisible. But I wasn't most people. I don't play the hero. I don't do righteous. I do records. I had dates. I had metadata. I had logs of deleted messages. I had hotel receipts that contradicted her version of business trips, and I never used a single one of them. Because until Thursday morning, I thought she was a closed chapter. But when someone smears your face in public, literally, on your building's glass, in front of people who trust you to run payroll, protect their jobs, and hold the line, you stop being polite. I didn't pull the trigger that night. I didn't email the folder or call Graves or even touch my phone. I just sat in the chair with the documents spread out and read them again. Not with rage, not with grief, with clarity, because leverage isn't loud. It's organized, and hers was categorized, chronologically filed, cross-referenced, waiting. Monica was mid-laugh when the waiter poured her third glass of Pinot. It was that irritating, staccato kind of laugh, just loud enough to turn heads, just rehearsed enough to sound spontaneous. She tilted her head at Alan, her lawyer, as she spoke. "I mean, honestly," she said, slicing into her ahi tuna. "The silence is deafening. Not a word. Not even a snide email. You know what that tells me?" Alan was chewing. Didn't respond fast enough. She leaned in. "It tells me I won. He's too proud to fight back." Which makes him predictable. And predictable men are boring. Alan smirked. "Forced. Sure," he said, reaching for the wine. "But predictable men also sue. Just saying." She waved him off. "Please, Dan. He doesn't have the stomach. He's one of those quiet types who thinks dignity means swallowing humiliation like cough syrup. That photo? I guarantee you he's walking past it every day pretending it's not there. I bet his employees don't even look him in the eye anymore." She took another sip. "You should have seen how I centered it. Right on the glass. Even had it laminated." Alan nodded, checking his watch. They were seated at Palmetto Row, a bistro that charged $19 for olives and only served still water if you specifically asked. The kind of place where reputations mingled over short ribs and reputational homicide. Monica was glowing. She wore her satisfaction like a silk wrap, soft, deliberate, and expensive. In her mind, this was victory on every front: public perception, emotional dominance, and legal immunity. Dan's silence was her parade float. The internet was the confetti. Then Alan's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and froze. No ringtone, no vibration, just a name. His posture changed. He stood up. "Excuse me a sec. Don't take too long," she sang, twirling her fork. Alan walked past the bar, around the corner, and pressed the phone to his ear. His voice was a hushed hiss. "Wait, who saw it?" Pause. "You're kidding." Longer pause. "No, I had no idea. I thought he was some regional exec." "You're saying he's what?" "Federal procurement." He paced. Okay. No, I'll fix it." "Oh God. No, she didn't tell me any of that. Not the brother. Not the vendor stuff. None of it." Another pause. Short. Final. Then he hung up. When he returned, his face was pale. All the warmth had drained from his voice. Monica barely looked up. "Everything okay, counselor?" Alan sat down slowly, cleared his throat. "You didn't tell me your ex had ties to the Federal Procurement Board." Monica blinked. "What? I just got a call. From someone I do not want calling me during dinner. He saw the photo. In the lobby. He recognized you. And now there's a file being pulled somewhere that we can't see." She narrowed her eyes. "Dan doesn't sit on any boards." Alan shook his head. "No, but he's connected to people who do. You think silence means weakness? It doesn't. It means he knew that someone important would see that photo. And he let them." She scoffed. "That's absurd." "Is it?" Alan snapped, suddenly less polite. "Because you painted a target on yourself. In a federal-adjacent building. During a procurement audit window. And you did it with a laminated insult in full public view. Jesus, Monica, do you know how fast the feds act when corruption smells like a headline?" She swallowed. Hard. Alan leaned in. "Take the photo down. Now, before someone decides your brother's firm isn't just shady, but criminally entangled. Before they put your name on a list you can't trend your way off of." The bistro noise kept going. Clinking plates. Shallow laughter. A saxophone playing smooth jazz over speakers. But Monica? She just stared at her wine. And for the first time that night, she didn't touch it. The voicemail came in at 7:41 a.m. No greeting. Just the stammering voice of a man who'd spent the night realizing that silence can be a form of surveillance. Mr. Rayner, this is Alan Whitaker. I represent. Well, I think you know who I represent. Look, there's been a misunderstanding. Monica's recent actions were ill-advised, but not malicious. Certainly not intended to escalate into anything damaging. Or official." He cleared his throat. Audible tension. "There's some concern now that certain parties, outside your company, have taken an interest. A federal-level interest. I think we both agree this is best handled quietly, without unnecessary escalation. If you would consider removing the photo, we'd greatly appreciate it. And, of course, open to a discussion if you prefer that route." A beat of silence. Then, almost as an afterthought, again, Monica didn't mean harm. "Please let's keep this between professionals." Click. I sat with it for a moment. Let the phone rest on the desk without touching it. Not because I was shocked, but because it confirmed what I needed to know. They were scrambling. And when people scramble, they say things they don't realize they're admitting. I forwarded the voicemail to my general counsel with a 2-word message. Added. No commentary. No interpretation. No reply to Alan. I didn't delete the voicemail. I didn't respond to Monica. And I did not take down the photo. I left it taped to the lobby glass. Same place, same posture. Employees still glanced. Some avoided eye contact with me. Others seemed emboldened, like they expected drama, a confrontation, a press release, maybe even a meltdown. But I gave them nothing. And that was the move. Because the moment you respond, you enter the game they've built. Their terrain, their timing, their hashtags and headlines. I wasn't playing Monica's game. I was building a record. Let her lawyer panic. Let Monica post cryptic stories about misunderstood women and men who weaponize silence. Let her think her laminated stunt was a feminist billboard instead of what it actually was, a confession taped up in federal view. By midday, one of my department heads, Caleb from logistics, stepped into my office. Shut the door. Hey, I know this is none of my business, sir. But the thing in the lobby, I didn't even look up from my screen. What about it? He hesitated, just wondering if it should maybe come down. PR risk. I mean, suppliers are starting to ask questions. I nodded slowly. Not at him, just to myself. Good to know. He waited. Thought I'd say more. I didn't. He left. By 4 o'clock, 2 clients had called. One was polite. The other wasn't. Both asked the same question in different tones. What the hell is going on at your HQ? I gave them both the same answer. Nothing actionable. Not yet. And that's what terrified them. Because in corporate America, silence isn't empty. It's loaded. It means the other side is preparing something you won't be able to deflect with press kits and polished apologies. It means you should already be worried. Meanwhile, Monica had gone dark. No new posts. No TikToks. No wine selfies. Her last upload, an Instagram story captioned "Unbothered," was now an ironic tombstone in her digital footprint. The silence on her end? That wasn't strategy. That was the beginning of realization. And realization comes slower to people who've spent their whole lives mistaking attention for immunity. The first public crack didn't come with a headline. It came with a database update, buried deep in a procurement oversight portal, one only compliance officers and government liaisons routinely combed through, was a quiet notation under Altros Systems Group, the tech supplier Monica's brother ran. Flagged for irregular subcontracting practices, under review. 3 weeks earlier, their name was still appearing on bid rosters. Now, it was under scrutiny. Frozen in place. No new contracts. Pending investigation. The reason? A sudden submission of supporting documents from an anonymous source, complete with internal emails, communication logs, and one particular voice memo. You can guess who sent them. No grand reveal. No press conference. Just a USB drive, properly labeled and forwarded through the right channels. I didn't include my name. Didn't need to. The contents spoke for themselves, and someone had finally listened. I didn't even find out from a contact. My legal team sent me a curt update. Federal Fraud Unit opened inquiry into Altros. Your materials are now part of a formal evidentiary chain. We advise non-engagement moving forward. Translation: the investigation had teeth. By midweek, Monica's phone rang, and this time, it wasn't a podcast invitation or a brunch RSVP. It was a federal process server. On her doorstep, holding a brown envelope. Inside, a subpoena. Witness testimony requested. Documentation demanded. A timeline under review. Her world, once framed by curated lighting and champagne captions, was now dictated by deadlines and legalese. And none of her hashtags were helping. She cracked on Thursday. Called twice. Then again. Then a text. Dan, please, can we talk? I didn't know this would go this far. I didn't respond. Of course not. That would imply emotion. Stillness is scarier. She tried one more time. Called my direct line at the office. That's when Erica, my assistant, answered. Mr. Rayner is unavailable, she said, in that perfect tone only a well-trained gatekeeper can summon. I just need 5 minutes. Monica pressed, voice already fraying. I just want to talk to him. He knows this wasn't about that. It was personal. We were personal. Erica waited a beat, then delivered the line I'd written days earlier. Mr. Rayner no longer handles personal matters. All inquiries are routed through legal. Click. No drama. No indulgence. Just a transfer of power wrapped in bureaucracy. Monica didn't call again. Instead, she posted a single vague tweet hours later. When the people you protected become the ones who hurt you the most, stay silent. Your dignity is louder than their war. But it didn't land. Because silence wasn't her weapon. It was mine. And the walls were closing in. Her brother's firm had stopped returning calls. The vendors she once casually advised had pulled out of meetings. One former client issued a no comment when asked about her involvement in a now-canceled contract. She was radioactive. And me? I was in a board meeting finalizing an overseas expansion. My legal team handled the rest. I didn't need to be anywhere near the fallout. That was the beauty of preparation, when your enemy starts a fire in your house. But you're the one who handed the fire marshal the blueprint last winter. Her calls went to voicemail. Her inbox lit up with subject lines she couldn't ignore. Request for documentation, Phase 2 review. Notice of review, Contractor Ethics Office. No one was asking for her opinions anymore. They were demanding her records. And this time, she was the one being archived. Alan's office was dim when Monica barged in. Dark wood, muted lamps. One of those overpriced glass sculptures that doesn't mean anything but looks like it should. He didn't offer her coffee, or water, or the usual forced pleasantries. She didn't notice. She was already unraveling. They're dragging me into this like I committed fraud, Alan. I wasn't even on payroll. I don't do the contracts. My brother handles the... Alan held up a hand. Not to comfort, to silence. You need to listen very carefully, he said, voice low and clinical. I spent the last 48 hours trying to get clarity on how this escalated so quickly. You want to know what I found out? She paced. That Dan's out for blood? That he wants to ruin my life over a goddamn photo. Alan didn't flinch. Dan didn't send anything. That stopped her. She turned. What? Not a file. Not a memo. Not a recording. Everything you're being flagged for came from inside a federal system. Raynor didn't leak a thing. She blinked, confused. But the emails, the voice memo. Submitted anonymously, he said. Through official channels. Accompanied by documentation that matched metadata from your own digital history. Which, by the way, they already had partial access to, because your brother's firm was already on a low-level compliance watch. You just elevated it. Monica collapsed into the chair across from his desk, stunned. Alan leaned forward. You think you poked a sleeping bear, he said. But what you did, Monica, was far dumber. She looked up slowly. What does that mean? He exhaled. You took a confidential, possibly incriminating association, and you laminated it. Then taped it to a corporate lobby that sits in a building with government vendor visibility. You made yourself the announcement. You didn't poke a bear. You broadcasted your own liability to federal eyes during a compliance sweep. She stared at him, mouth open, words struggling to form. I thought he was just quiet. I thought he was the kind of guy who freezes when women go public. The stoic type. Not connected. Alan shook his head, almost pitying. You're not hearing me. He didn't have to be connected. He didn't need to push anything. That man let you do it. All he did was stand still long enough for the right person to walk by and read what you wrote. You handed Graves the signal flare. Graves? Alan nodded. Leonard Graves. Office of Contractor Integrity. Senior level. Has authority to initiate flag reviews without committee vote. He saw your photo in the lobby. He saw your name. And he opened the file on your brother's firm that afternoon. Monica's face went pale. This isn't fair. I didn't break the law. I didn't. He cut her off. This isn't about fairness. It's about optics. Connections. Patterns. You don't have to commit fraud to look like someone worth investigating. And in federal contracting, perception precedes protocol. She gripped the armrests, knuckles white. But if Dan didn't push anything, then he won't protect me either. Alan didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence was answer enough. Her plan wasn't just failing. It was invisible to the man she targeted. That was the part she couldn't process. She had framed the whole narrative in her head. Righteous anger, public outcry, a quiet retreat followed by reconciliation or a reckoning. But Dan never stepped into the story. He never responded, never defended, never attacked. He just let gravity do what it always does when someone tapes their own secrets to a window and hopes no one important walks by. And someone very important did. The letter was simple. Black ink. No logo. Just a one-page cover note, printed on matte white paper. Professionally cold. It wasn't addressed to Monica. It was addressed to the HR director at the Emory Foundation, the same nonprofit she used to name drop at galas, back when she was still drinking her wine in photo-ready poses and telling people she was in conversations to join their board. The envelope was thick, certified, signed for on delivery. Inside was the cover note. To whom it may concern, I am submitting this documentation for internal review regarding Monica Connolly, a former strategic communications associate at your organization, and a candidate currently under consideration for a position on your board of advisors. The enclosed materials reflect statements, digital correspondence, and verified communications made during and after her tenure, which may be relevant to the ethics review process for candidate selection. This is not a request for disciplinary action, only that you ensure the appropriate level of scrutiny given the contents of these materials and their implications on Emory Foundation's public and internal reputation. Sincerely, Daniel Rayner. It included 3 things. A printed email chain between Monica and a former Emory colleague, where she bragged about manipulating a donor narrative to push out a female staffer she considered brand confusing. The phrasing was hers. So was the timestamp. A transcript of a recorded conversation, this one captured at a fundraiser dinner. Monica had made a casual joke about guilt-tripping philanthropists into writing bigger checks and suggested she could coach anyone on tears per dollar ratios. She'd said it with pride. The man across from her hadn't laughed. He worked in compliance. She hadn't known. A post-employment NDA agreement with a signature. Hers. The terms included a clause that prohibited disparaging remarks regarding internal policy decisions, donors, and staff. She had broken that clause. Publicly. Repeatedly. Dan never sent it to a journalist. Never tweeted. Never even referenced it in passing. He just mailed it. 2 weeks later, a quiet update was posted to Emory's website under Leadership News. Position withdrawn. Candidate no longer under consideration. No name. No photos. Just a deletion, folded neatly into the digital ledger. But Monica knew, because she'd been scheduled to speak at the upcoming fundraising summit. Her face had been on the flyer. Now it wasn't. The landing page led to a 404. She called 3 people. None returned her message. She texted her former mentor, Dana, the woman who once told her, "Play the long game. Boards are where real power lies." Dana replied with a single sentence. "You forgot the long game has memory." There was no scandal, no expose. No one dragged her through the mud. She just stopped appearing in the rooms she thought she'd already conquered. The worst part? It wasn't revenge. Revenge implies passion, fire, a need to hurt back. This was colder. Dan wasn't punishing her. He was removing her. Not loudly, not permanently, just enough that the doors she once assumed would open stayed shut. The name Monica Connolly no longer circulated on donor lists. Not on short lists. Not even in gossip. She hadn't just lost a title. She'd lost momentum. Because when you fight someone who never punches back, there's nothing for you to swing at. No target. No debate. Just air. And in that quiet, Monica finally realized. This wasn't about vindication. This was about becoming forgettable. The ballroom was beige. That bland, upscale kind of beige meant to feel neutral, but always ends up depressing. Soft jazz spilled out of ceiling speakers. The name tags were printed in a serif font that tried too hard. A soft hum of polite industry banter buzzed through the crowd. Compliance consultants, logistics VPs, the occasional private equity scout pretending to belong. Dan didn't stand out, which was exactly how he liked it. He wore a navy suit, no tie, held his drink in his left hand, always leave the right open for handshakes. It had been months since the last direct move, since the envelope, since the flagging, since the Emory Foundation quietly deleted Monica's name from its board consideration list and moved on without ever uttering hers again. He wasn't here for war stories. He was here for a panel on post-pandemic reshoring strategies. But as always, someone found him. A young man in an ill-fitting blazer approached with reverence in his eyes and too much excitement in his voice. Barely 30. The kind of man who still believed ethical governance was a form of activism. "Mr. Rayner?" he asked, already half smiling. Dan turned slightly, nodded once. "I just wanted to say, I studied your case during ethics training. The way you handled the escalation, the documentation trail, the absence of retaliation, it's practically a model. Our instructor called it the gold standard of silent accountability." Dan didn't blink, just offered a small nod. Glad it was useful. No further elaboration. No pride. Just a man acknowledging a map someone else had chosen to trace. The kid lingered, hoping for a story, a quote. Dan gave him nothing. And then he felt it. That shift in the air. It wasn't perfume. Or footsteps. It was colder. The sensation of past proximity. The way a body recognizes someone long before the eyes catch up. Across the room, standing alone near the open bar, Monica was watching. She wasn't dressed for power anymore. Gone were the strategic heels, the diamond cuffs, the performative poise. She looked muted. Even the wine she held seemed less sure of itself. She didn't smile. She didn't scowl. She just stood there, waiting. Dan didn't acknowledge her. He turned his back slowly, stepped into a conversation with a former vendor, and never once let his gaze flicker back. It wasn't cruelty. It was finality. Monica lingered for another hour. tried to insert herself into 2 side chats. Neither stuck. Her laugh didn't land. Her posture wobbled. Eventually, she ended up near the buffet table, now emptied of food and usefulness. Just trays, crumbs, and a few abandoned name tags. That's when she saw it. Tucked neatly near the centerpiece vase was a small 4x6 photo, slightly worn at the edges, like it had been handled many times. She picked it up, already frowning. It was her, from years ago, standing at a podium, mid-sentence, microphone in one hand, fire in her eyes, hair pulled tight, the exact image she used to promote herself on industry panels. Her brand, confident, controlled, commanding. But this copy had been altered, barely. Just one thing added, a caption, in the same red sharpest style she'd once used to tape Dan's face to the lobby window. It read, "Some lessons come late, some stick forever." There was no signature, no crowd, no scene, just her, and the ghost of who she'd been, silenced by the stillness of someone who never had to raise his voice. She looked around, for Dan, for Alan, for someone who might have placed it there, but no one was watching anymore. No one needed to, because humiliation fades. But recognition, the kind where you see yourself, really see yourself, for what you did and who you've become, that stays. She slipped the photo into her clutch, and for the rest of the evening, not a single person approached her.